The first word, Phos speaks, in chapter 98, changes everything. But you most likely didn't notice, because it's not something that can be translated. I'm not sure how this was translated in the Russian or French or Spanish versions, but in the English, I completely did not get this. Because how do you translate a word like Watakushi? Unlike English, Japanese has many different pronouns for I, the word referring to self. If you've been in the Houseki no Kuni fandom for long enough, you probably have heard that in the Japanese version, the characters mainly refer to themselves by male pronouns. However, this isn't entirely accurate. I plan to make a more in-depth video on the specific topic, so subscribe for that, but I'm just going to give a quick overview for the sake of this video. Among the gems, there are 4 pronouns for I used. Boku is the most common one and used by Phos, Dia, Bort, Goshen, Euclid, Zircon, Amethyst, Red Beryl, Obsidian, Benito, Watermelon, Ghost, and Lapis. Boku is commonly used for young boys. It used to be that no girls would ever say boku, but that is now slightly changing with modern-day Japanese, but for the most part, only young boys use boku. I want to put a huge emphasis on young, because I saw a theory that the gems distinguish themselves from more childlike to adult-like, whether they use boku or ore, which is the next one, used by Cinnabar, Yellow Diamond, Padparacha, Sven, Cairngorm, and Nephthite. Ore is extremely masculine and sounds more aggressive, although with how the gems speak in the show and the manga, it seems that it's more casual since many of them do use ore just to refer to themselves. Although all the characters I just mentioned, except maybe Sven, seem more mature in their language, so it would make sense why they would use ore. I find it also interesting that Ghost and Cairngorm use different pronouns, which distinguishes them again language-wise, which I'll probably have to make another video on that too. But on to the next pronoun, Watashi, which is used by Jade, Antark, Rutile, Peridot, Hemanephrite, and Congo. Watashi is the most common I pronoun used in Japanese because it is gender neutral and considered to be polite. The previous ones, boku and ore, are kind of like more slang. It would like be saying y'all in a college paper, whereas watashi is the actual word for I that most people use. But there's one more pronoun, atashi, which I thought that no one used because that is the female version of boku, basically. But actually, Alexandrite is the only gem who uses atashi, which makes sense looking back on it because Alexandrite is the only character who also affirms to be called a more feminine name, with wanting Chan at the end of their name instead of San. This was translated in the English translation as wanting to be called Alexi over Alex, but most of that is for another video. So when people say that in Japanese they mainly use male pronouns, it's true, but it also is more complex because they don't have the same pronouns as we do in English. A girl can still use boku or ore, it's just not common and seen as very rude and very informal. But again, separate video, I'm not going to talk about that in this video. What I want to get at is that Phos uses boku, the entire series, except 92 and past 98. In chapter 92, Phos uses the pronoun ore. We have never heard Phos use this pronoun. As I said before, ore is way more masculine, it's more aggressive, and it's very informal. The context of Phos using this pronoun is their fight with Cinnabar. I believe there are 2 strong reasons for this pronoun change. The first one is that Phos is putting themselves above every other gem in this situation. They are trying to sound more mature, more masculine, and more aggressive, and way less polite. These are all things that are embodied in the pronoun ore. The second reason is that Cinnabar uses ore. This is Phos matching Cinnabar verbally, and they do this again when they call out Cinnabar's hardness, too. The first time Cinnabar and Phos meet, Cinnabar calls out 3.5 to Phos. This is an exact parallel to that moment, with Phos using Cinnabar's language in how they refer to themselves in pronoun usage, and how they refer to others in hardness level. This is another small detail that is unrelated to the main topic of the video, but I want to talk about it as well. The pronoun Phos uses for Cinnabar in this moment is omae. Usually to be polite in Japanese, people would just use the other person's name when referring to them. Using the word you at all can be very rude, and there's 3 most common uses of you, which is anata, which is the most polite one, kimi, which is kind of what you would say to like a spouse or someone you're really close to, and then omae, which can be used for really good friends or really bad enemies. And Cinnabar is both. I just wanted to point that out because with everyone's nice memories of the anime, we always hear Phos say Shinsha, which is Cinnabar's Japanese name. And Omaya is used in the Gems language to just talk to one another, but the fact is that Omaya can either mean you're very close or very distant. And I love how Japanese just has some of these words that can mean totally different things in different contexts. Even if Phos, I don't know exactly if Phos has used Omaya to refer to Cinnabar before, but Phos using Omaya to refer to Cinnabar now completely changes the tone of how they interacted before. Tangent aside, that's why Phos using Ore just changes their vocal presence so much, just because even if Phos used Omaya before to indicate that Phos was close to Cinnabar, now that they use Ore combined with Omaya just makes them sound super distant, putting themselves above Cinnabar and showing their aggressiveness. Now, you might have noticed that I mentioned 4 pronouns the Gems used, and those were boku, ore, watashi, and atashi just for Alexandrite. In chapter 98, Phos uses the I pronoun watakushi, which is different from watashi. This changes so much. Phos has never even heard another character use the word watakushi. And most Japanese people rarely hear it in general. Watakushi is almost never used in anime or manga or a lot of Japanese media because it's extremely formal. You only use watakushi when you are talking to a god or royalty. It puts you so far below someone you're speaking to in rank. And Phos has never heard it before, but I bet Kongo has. In chapter 92, Phos uses ore, the most distant language for putting yourself above someone. In chapter 98, Phos uses watakushi, the most distant language in putting yourself below someone. That is such a drastic change in the span of 5 or so chapters, but not a drastic change considering the 10,000 years. Kongo was a servant, and now Phos is too. I cannot stress how much the first word of 98 changes everything with what Phos is saying. Because when Phos starts out with Watakushi wa, they're talking as if they have never met any of the characters they're speaking to. It's so upsetting. Imagine not being able to see anyone for 10,000 years. Imagine not being able to call out to anyone, or say anyone's name, or tell anyone what you're thinking. And when you see everyone you know again, would you talk to them the same? The reason why Phos doesn't use boku, ore, watashi, or even atashi is because Phos doesn't know any of those characters. They haven't known them for 10,000 years. Phos speaks to them as if they are people they've never met, because they are. All the Gems Phos once knew are Lunarian, and each one of them did their best to forget Phos. You only know someone based on your interactions with them. When that person forgets every interaction with you, who are they now? Phos may not know who these characters are, but Phos knows why they're there. The Lunarians approach Phos for Phos to do their job. Phos needed to be alone and isolated so that Phos wouldn't know the characters that Phos is playing for. Because if Phos knew them, Phos might not want to see them go, like Kongo did. Watakushi is the final nail in the coffin. Unlike Ore or Omaiwa, emphasizing a close relationship even in a positive or a negative way, Watakushi is very neutral. And it puts Phos in the spot of a servant, just with how low it ranks the speaker. This is most likely Kongo's influence, and the memories from past humanity that probably gave Phos the knowledge to use the word Watakushi, because I doubt Phos would have heard any other character use this pronoun. This also explains why Phos's comments after the Watakushi wa aren't as snarky as a lot of people might have thought, because Phos is saying pretty terrible things, but Phos is speaking so politely that it doesn't come with any tone of aggression or power. It's instead Phos informing them that this is something Phos could do, but they won't. And the Watakushi kind of spoils that Phos will pray for them, because Phos sees it as their duty. That's why they say Watakushi wa. Phos is speaking to their authorities, the ones who run their lives, the ones who give them purpose. Phos is speaking to those who can give Phos a purpose, the purpose being turning them to nothingness. The one thing that Phos desired more than anything else, to have a job. If we do still put Phos as a deity figure, despite their language in this scene, then this is a common thing that I've actually seen with Noragami as well, where the gods in the story are not propped up to be all-powerful beings, but are instead propped out to be servants of humanity. But in contrast to Christianity, where God is a personal being who serves out of love for his creation, in Buddhism and Shintoism, which Houseki no Kuni and Noragami follow more closely, it is heavily emphasized that gods are impersonal. In fact, love is seen as a flaw in Kongo, if he's supposed to be more of a deity figure in the story. Whereas Phos, having a lack of knowledge and love and personal relationship with the Lunarians, is shown as Phos being closer to godhood. This is why Phos is both a servant and a god, because although Phos is all-powerful, Phos being a god means that they must meet the demands of those who believe in them, those who come to them with their requests, and Phos must answer them, because Phos is a servant. Now, chapter 98 is the only time Phos says Watakushi. After Phos prays and the Lunarians are gone, a pebble cries out to Phos, some others too, and even a random eyeball that is Kongo's brother. We all know the story. And all those characters, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe all those characters use the word boku for their pronoun. But Phos doesn't use boku. Phos uses watashi, which is Kongo's pronoun that he used with the gems. This also really elevates Phos's final form being a lot more androgynous, because it's the first time Phos has really used gender-neutral pronouns. And I think it also adds to the fact that they now refer to themselves in the third person, in the sense that they say the one who was once Phosphophyllite, like Kongo talked about them before. It's probably also to show the mesh of Kongo and Phos and all the other materials that are now making Phos realize that they aren't themselves. I just really love how Phos changing verbally indicates more detailedness in their character arc that is really hard to translate for other languages. Like I said, if any of you read the other translations of the manga, the French, Spanish, Russian, or whatever it is, let us know in the comments if you've noticed any of these changes translated in your language, because I know in English that it just really hard to translate, that they really can't, and so I have to explain it in the Japanese because that's how it is, but I wonder if it can be translated into other languages, or if you also didn't know this, so please let me know in the comments if you read a different translation. So Phos starts the journey using boku for young boys, or as to show that they're more of a kid, that they're childlike, that they are close to their family and the people that they talk to, because it is more informal and it is happier that way. They then turn to ore, which is the same pronoun that Cinnabar uses to sound more masculine, to distance themselves a little bit from the people that they're talking to with aggression. And then after the 10,000 years, they use Watakushi, which is extremely formal, to show that they now see themselves as a servant, and they still see themselves as below all the other characters. And that despite achieving all this power and wisdom and all of these things, they still feel below everyone else. It didn't change the way they view themselves to their peers. And finally, they use Watashi, because they no longer associate themselves with their young, pure self, and that they don't know exactly who they are anymore, and that the blend of all the different materials inside of them makes them unsure that they're even themselves, which this is the exact way that death was described to them by Ventriloquist.
おう、そうよな。いなくなるってことかの。どこにもいないし、絶対に見つからない。呼ばれてもな。もう自分が誰かもわからなくなってるんじゃ。ただ、死は何もかも台無しにする代わりに、生を価値あるものにする。そう悪いものでもない。でも、ちょっと寂しいね。うん。だが避けられん。